After the breakup, I hit the jackpot with 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Right on cue, my parents arranged a blind date with some wealthy family. With no other choice, I had to brace myself to go meet this rich sucker. I figured I'd ask if he was interested in playing daddy. The second I walked in the door, I froze. My ex-boyfriend was sitting there with a thunderous look on his face, which turned to shock the moment he saw me. My mom introduced us enthusiastically. "Emily, this is the heir to the Miller Corporation." Wasn't he supposed to be working construction? My ex stood up and gave me a smirk. "No waiting tables today?" I met Mark Miller when I was in the middle of running away from home. My dad had cut off my cards and confiscated my car and apartment. On the principle that I'd rather starve than accept a handout from my family, I got a job as a waitress at a hotel. On my first day of work, I forcibly kissed him. It wasn't my fault. Blame the tile. Blame the cleaning lady. That 5-star hotel was just a little too diligent about mopping the floors. After I kissed him, Mark's cheeks flushed red. His features were exquisite, his skin so flawless it looked like you could squeeze water from it. I'd meant to say, "I'm so sorry, are you okay?" But what came out was, "Sorry, you don't mind, do you? If you do, I'll take responsibility for you." Mark blinked, then the corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. "Okay." I was floored. He wasn't just handsome, his voice was sexy as hell, too. The universe must have taken pity on my broke-ass self and sent me this dreamboat. The only thing was, he didn't seem to have much money. His whole outfit looked like it came from some fast fashion app. But that didn't make him any less hot. Mark waited until my shift was over. As we walked, he was so shy he didn't even dare hold my hand. "Where do you live?" "I'll walk you home." He said it wasn't safe for a girl to walk home alone at night. Listen to that. What a thoughtful, absolute gem of a guy. I replied shyly, "My family's not well off. I live in a rental, and I'm just a waitress." But Mark suddenly grabbed my hand, his expression completely serious. "It doesn't matter if your family's poor. We're young and have our own 2 hands. We can build a life for ourselves. And as for work, there's no such thing as a low-class job." His values were so on point. I couldn't help but ask, "What do you do for work?" A flicker of panic crossed his eyes. He paused for a moment, then pointed to a massive, half-finished high-rise in the distance. "I work over there." "Oh. So you work in construction." No wonder he understood the struggles of the working class. I patted him on the shoulder. "The sky's the limit for you, boyfriend." Mark paused, then smiled, a grin playing on his lips. "You too." From then on, every day when I passed his work site on my way to my job, he'd be there. He'd be standing by the road in his work clothes, waving at me. His pockets were like a treasure chest. Sometimes he'd pull out a pork bun and soy milk, other times it would be dumplings and milk. He even brought me a strawberry mousse once. Looking at the delicate packaging, I recognized it from my favorite bakery. Back in the day, I could down 10 of those without blinking, but now, on my $2,800 a month salary, even one was a luxury. I carefully scooped a piece with a spoon and held it to his lips, my heart aching. "This must have been expensive, right? You only make $4,500 a month. What a waste to spend it on such a pricey cake." Mark took my hand and guided the spoon into my mouth. He frowned. "How could it be a waste if it's for you? Or, do you not like it?" How could I not like it? In the months since I'd run away, I'd been pinching every penny. My mouth was so bored it was about to sprout wings and fly away. The night before, I'd just glanced a few extra times into the shop window as I passed, and somehow, Mark had remembered. I threw my arms around him and kissed the corner of his mouth. "Thank you. You're too good to me." Mark smiled, pleased. "As long as you like it. Tomor. When I make it big, I'll buy that whole bakery for you." That's a beautiful thought, but reality is a harsh mistress. As far as I knew, that bakery wasn't for sale at any price. But the next day, I woke up to the news that the bakery had been acquired by a mysterious buyer. Me? Who the hell had that kind of pull? We were sitting on a park bench, eating the breakfast Mark had brought me. I mumbled through a mouthful. I heard La Royale Patisserie got bought out. I wonder who has that kind of cash to throw around. Mark, beside me, clearly tensed up. He forced a smile. You heard about that? Remembering how he'd said he wanted to buy the bakery for me yesterday, my heart softened. I immediately tried to comfort him. Hey, don't feel bad. Those rich people just have more money than sense. The corner of Mark's mouth twitched. He seemed even more upset. Men and their pride, I get it. Honey, honestly, I'm just happy to eat the cake you buy for me. As for the bakery itself. Before I could finish, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The caller ID read, "The old man." It was my heartless father. Feeling a little guilty, I quickly stuffed the rest of my breakfast bun into Mark's hand and walked off to the side to take the call. Emily, honey, I've been thinking. If you miss home, you should come back and see your mom and me. We've pampered you for over 20 years. How can you handle the hardship out there? Hardship? I glanced back at Mark, and my heart felt as sweet as honey. My old man was clearly trying the emotional approach since the tough love act failed. I knew exactly what he was up to. For the past few years, for some unknown reason, my mom had gotten really into traveling. And not just any travel, we're talking round-the-world trips. In just 2 years, she'd taken off on 4 impromptu international journeys, leaving my dad, the hopeless romantic, at home in a complete panic. He practically spent 20 hours a day on video calls with her. His excuse? My wife is too naive, I'm afraid someone will trick her. Luckily, years of being the third wheel had made me immune to their PDA. So, my dad started trying to manipulate me. He was desperate for me to inherit the company, claiming he was getting old, losing his energy, and so on. It was obvious he was just trying to dump the company on me so he could go gallivanting around the world with my mom. If I'd been any weaker, I would have fallen right into his trap. Dad, I already told you, I'm going to make it on my own. TSK. You silly girl, are you still mad at me? I was just angry when I said that. Humph. Let's not talk about that. Emily, do you know who bought La Royale Patisserie? I wasn't interested in anything else, but I was definitely interested in this. I had begged my dad to negotiate with them before, but they wouldn't sell, not even for $750,000. The owner said it wasn't about the money, it was about passion. Okay, tell me. Who bought it? My dad deliberately played coy. Take a guess. Dad, don't be like that. If you're not going to tell me, I'm hanging up. No, wait, I'll tell you. Remember that guy from the Miller family I wanted you to go on a date with? The brilliant one? I did vaguely recall something like that. What was his name again? My dad continued, think about it, Emily. He's bought your favorite bakery. If you two get married, you can have all the cake you want, whenever you want. It was true. La Royale's cakes were sold in limited quantities daily, and even with a reservation, you weren't guaranteed to get one. But to give in to my dad's matchmaking and corporate succession plan just for cake? That was just pathetic. Dad, are you underestimating your daughter? Faced with temptation, I still had the backbone to hang up the phone. Seeing my bad mood, Mark walked over and asked with concern, what's wrong? Nothing, just my dad being a nag. I wrapped my arms around him and said playfully, Mark, we have to work extra hard and make cakes that are even better than La Royale's. Huh? Mark looked at me, surprised. You haven't heard, have you? The guy who bought the bakery is also named Miller. But he's nothing like you. You're handsome and hardworking, and that Miller guy is just some nepo baby. Mark's expression was, for lack of a better word, complicated. He asked me cautiously, Emily, why are you so hostile toward nepo babies? There was that old saying, wasn't there? I'd rather cry in a BMW than laugh on a bicycle. This poor kid was probably worried I was going to look down on him. So I quickly said, I am. I can't stand those trust fund kids. You have no idea the kind of rich people I've seen at my hotel. Some of them are so nouveau riche, unbelievably arrogant and rude. They're not as good as us. Hardworking poor people, right? I, of course, belong to the some of them category. Mark nodded slightly, looking preoccupied as he took the still warm bun from his coat and handed it to me. Smells so good. And it was. The buns were huge, with thin skin and a generous filling, shrimp, beef, mushrooms. It was different every time. Where do you get these? They're not like the ones I buy outside. Mark froze for a second, a hint of panic in his eyes. They're homemade. My family makes them. I couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Wow. Is it your mom or your grandma? She's an amazing cook. Mark just smiled without saying a word. After breakfast, we went our separate ways to work. During my lunch break, my mom called. Sweetheart, come home. Why stay in a rental when you have your own house? I already scolded your father. He really shouldn't have spoken to you like that. My mom still thought I was mad at my dad and that's why I wouldn't come home. That wasn't the only reason. I knew my own limits. I could manage myself, but managing a company and taking over the family business? Count me out. More importantly, after being coddled by my parents for over 20 years, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone and see if I could make it on my own. Originally, I was just working on my graduate thesis and didn't plan on being a waitress long term. But Mark was an unexpected variable in my plans. Now, it looked like I had to date, keep my job as a waitress, and stay away from home. What can I say? I liked the guy. Mom, don't try to persuade me. You'd have better luck persuading Dad. And let me tell you a secret, I have a boyfriend now. What? Really? What does he look like? How old is he? Where's he from? What do his parents do? Me, damn my big mouth. Why do I say everything that pops into my head? Mom, I have to get back to work. Talk to you later. Emily, when did you get a boyfriend? Don't be shy, tell your mother all about it. After hanging up, I wanted to slap myself a couple of times. Of all the things to say, I had to blurt out that I had a boyfriend. Sure enough, my mom started dropping hints, but I just pretended not to understand. After work, Mark came to walk me home. We strolled down the street hand in hand. When I got tired, he'd carry me on his back and buy me warm roasted sweet potatoes and candied chestnuts. He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes full of affection. Emily, next month I'm buying a car. That way you won't have to freeze with me anymore. I immediately shook my head. No way. How are you going to warm my hands in a car with the heat blasting? I don't want that. Besides, work isn't far from home. Walking back is good exercise. Mark looked at me, his dark eyes brimming with adoration. Okay. As we neared my apartment complex, I saw a familiar big Mercedes from a distance. The vanity plate, young one, was especially conspicuous among the other ordinary cars. Why was my mom here? When Mark wasn't looking, I whipped out my phone. Sure enough, my mom had texted me, "Sweetheart, Mommy's here to see you." This was all my fault for running my mouth this afternoon. Mom, thanks a bunch. I might have to work late today, so I probably won't be back. Nonsense, I can see you standing at the end of the block. My mom sent another winking emoji. Is that boy next to you your boyfriend? Come a little closer, Mom can't see his face. She's really my mother, all right, leaving me no room to escape. I immediately grabbed Mark's arm. Honey, maybe you can just drop me off here. Mark raised an eyebrow, puzzled. What's wrong? And nothing. I just feel bad that you worked all day and then walked all this way with me. I want you to go home and rest. Mark tweaked my nose and said with a grin, I'm happy just being with you. How could I be tired? Just as I saw my mom getting out of the car, I grabbed him and spun around. In that case, then you can walk with me a little longer. With that, I pulled him away at a brisk pace. I sent Mark off to buy boba tea and quickly called my mom. Mom, stop messing around. My boyfriend has no idea who I really am. He thinks I'm just a regular working class girl. My mom was silent for a few seconds. Oh. I see. That's okay, Mommy can play along. I wanted to drop to my knees and beg her. No, your acting is terrible. My mom was still determined. Then I just won't say anything, how about that? I came to bring you food. Are you really going to be so heartless as to send me away? I looked around, and an idea struck me. Mom, everyone here is struggling. If you show up in a luxury car, people will think you're here to show off. And if they find out you're my mom, I might get targeted by thieves. That did the trick. My mom hesitated. All right then. Sweetheart, you have to protect yourself. By the way, is your boyfriend staying the night? Me, Mom, what are you talking about? We're just dating. It's completely innocent. Seeing Mark walking back with 2 cups of boba tea, I quickly hung up. Your favorite taro boba. I gritted my teeth and stood with Mark at the end of the block for over 10 minutes. Only after I saw my mom finally drive away did I relax. The tip of Mark's nose and his ears were red from the cold, and my heart ached for him. Why don't you come up for a cup of hot tea? After a month of dating, this was the first time I had invited him to my place. Okay. Mark chuckled teasingly. And while I'm there, I can help you fix light bulbs and unclog drains. Oh, shut up. We laughed and joked all the way back to my apartment. I had just poured Mark a cup of hot water when there was a knock at the door. Probably a delivery. I explained, meeting his questioning gaze. When I opened the door, I was completely dumbfounded. It was my mom. Worse, she was wearing a food delivery uniform from some app. At first glance, she actually looked the part. When my mom saw me, she put on a practiced, professional smile. She handed me the food with one hand and used the other to push me aside, craning her neck to peer into the apartment. Then she yelled in a voice loud enough for the whole building to hear, "It's for 2 people, right? I brought you 2 sets of silverware." Oh, God, I am so done. I quickly looked back and saw that Mark hadn't come out. Only then did I dare to lower my voice. Mom, what are you doing? My mom looked at me with an innocent expression. Delivering food. She even told me gleefully, Emily, sweetheart, you were right. I do need to be more low-key. Ever since I started wearing this delivery uniform to collect rent, I feel so much more down to earth. What kind of person delivers food like this? No, wait, what kind of person collects rent like this? I should have known. With my mom's intense curiosity, there was no way she could contain her burning desire for gossip after finding out I had a boyfriend. Mom, don't ruin this for me. Your delivery is done. You can go now. My mom looked at me in disbelief, as if I weren't her own flesh and blood. Sweetheart, Mom dressed up like this just to see you. Can't you even invite me in for a cup of tea? She was doing this on purpose. I tried to be tactful. Mom, have you ever heard of someone inviting a delivery person in for tea? My mom thought about it seriously. It's not unheard of. I remember seeing on the news one time. Why was she taking this so seriously? Mom, I'm not kidding around. Tomorrow. I can take the whole day off tomorrow to spend with you, okay? My mom shook her head decisively. Nope. It has to be today. Me, Mom, even though you're my mother, today is really not a good day. Fine. It's time I revealed my true identity. I froze. Was she about to transform into a superhero or spill the beans to Mark? Before she could say another word, I moved first. Just as Mark, tired of waiting, came to the door, he saw me with my hand clamped over my mom's mouth. Her eyes were wide with indignation, and she was making muffled noises. I quickly explained to Mark through the partially open door, "Just a minute. I have something to say to this lady." "You go sit down, go on." Seeing my serious expression, Mark hesitated for a moment before returning to the living room. I quickly pulled my mom outside and closed the door. One look. I was one look away from seeing his face clearly. My mom slapped my back a couple of times and grumbled, "You ungrateful little thing. Even if he's a poor kid, your mother wouldn't make things difficult for him. As long as you like him, I'll support you." As heartwarming as her words were, I hadn't forgotten that I was the one hiding my identity from Mark. I gently patted her back and explained. "Mom, you have to understand your daughter. If you go in there and blow my cover, what if he gets angry?" My mom stared at me for a long time, then said, "Why are you such a hopeless romantic, just like your father?" "Emily," my mom smiled like a fox, "you didn't really think I was going to reveal that I'm your mother, did you?" "What else?" My mom scoffed, pulled out a huge ring of keys from her bag, and dangled them triumphantly in front of my face. "I'm here to collect the rent. I forgot to tell you, you're renting one of our properties." "Hold on." I had scraped and saved to pay 3 months' rent in advance, and now my mom was telling me I was renting from my own family. "Mom, are you serious right now?" Now I finally understood what my dad meant when he said that cryptic thing to me as I was leaving home. "Emily, you're still young. You have no idea why the Monkey King could never escape the Buddha's palm." It wasn't that I couldn't escape. It was that I'd jumped out of one trap, only to be led into another by them. Thinking of this, I took my mom's hand and asked sweetly, "Mommy, does that mean I can?" "No. I haven't even finished." "I know what you're going to say. Free rent? No deal." She really was my mother. The rejection was swift and absolute. Worried that Mark would get suspicious from waiting so long, I quickly coaxed my mom into leaving and hurried back inside. When Mark heard the door open, he immediately came to meet me, asking anxiously, "What happened? Did you two have a fight?" I waved my hand with a smile. "Nope, me and that lady are totally fine." Mark looked skeptical. "Then she was?" My eyes darted around. I couldn't look him in the face. "She was begging me for a 5-star review. I hadn't eaten our family chef's cooking in ages." I buried my head in the food she'd brought, barely paying attention to what he said. Mark was so good to me, so I couldn't treat him poorly, could I? Over the weekend, I followed the recipe our chef taught me. After countless failures, I finally learned how to make sushi. On Monday at noon, I went to the construction site where he worked to surprise him. I called him when I was just outside. "Honey, guess where I am right now?" The sound of machinery hummed from within the site, but strangely, Mark's end of the line was completely quiet. I looked up at the 26th floor of the building under construction, where figures the size of footballs were busy at work. Sigh. Construction work is so tough. "Emily, where are you?" Mark's voice was deep and magnetic, making my heart flutter. "I'm outside your work site with lunch for you." I added, thoughtfully, "I know you're working on the top floor, so don't rush down." "I can wait." "Okay, wait for me." "Emily, don't come in. It's dirty and not safe here." He must have been really excited, because I could hear a slight waver in Mark's voice. 15 minutes later, Mark stood before me, out of breath. He was wearing a yellow hard hat and a dirty, ill-fitting uniform. I touched his wrist, which was sticking out a good few inches from his sleeve, and said with a pang of sympathy, "Your boss is so inhumane. How could they skimp on your work uniforms like this?" Mark's face turned beet red. He stammered, "Well, the boss is really busy. He probably just didn't notice these details." Seeing his shy demeanor, I knew he'd be too embarrassed to ask his boss for a new uniform. I put my hands on my hips, exasperated. Details are the most important thing. It's winter, and you're working on the top floor with your wrists and ankles exposed. You'll get arthritis when you're older. No, I have to go talk to your boss and get this sorted out. If no one else was going to look out for my boy, I would. With that, I grabbed his hand and started to charge in. A resigned Mark had no choice but to borrow a hard hat from a passing coworker for me to wear. It was, however, a red one. Emily, the logistics manager, Mr. Williams, isn't here right now. You won't find him even if you go. Don't worry, I'll definitely bring this up with him when he gets back, Mark said quickly. Besides, didn't you bring me lunch? I'm starving. Hearing that the manager wasn't there, I had to drop it. Mark. Little Mark, there's a spot over here. Not far away, a worker wearing a white hard hat waved at him enthusiastically. Mark led me by the hand over there. When we went inside, I realized the small metal shed had heating. The little room was spotless. Hey, why didn't your coworker come in to eat? I asked curiously. Mark glanced outside. They've already eaten. Well, I take back what I said earlier. Your boss is actually pretty decent, installing heating in your lunch area. Mark was staring at the thermos in my hands, looking antsy. He must be starving after hauling bricks all morning. The thought made my heart ache. I made you sushi. Try it and see if you like it. Mark popped a piece into his mouth and immediately showered it with praise. Delicious. It's so good, even better than the authentic Japanese sushi I've had. You been to Japan? Mark quickly shook his head. No, I just bought sushi from a place called Japanese Sushi once. I patted his head sympathetically. Someday, I'll take you abroad to eat authentic cuisine. Mark's head shot up. Huh? No. I mean, when we have money, we'll travel abroad together, okay? Hearing that, Mark finally nodded. I wanted to bite my tongue off. I had almost blown my cover. I curiously watched a group of workers with different colored hard hats gathered in an empty area outside the window. What are they doing? Mark answered without looking up. Having a meeting. Why didn't they call you for the meeting? Mark paused, then finally said, I'm not high-ranking enough. I let out a small ah, and then I understood. It made sense. Mark only had a high school diploma and came from a poor family. Finding a job that paid $4,500 a month in a big city was already a great achievement. Mark, the colors of your hats are different. Do they represent different ranks? Yes. After finishing the entire box of sushi, Mark came to the window and explained. Red is the highest rank, for the managers. White is for regular workers. His profile was sharp and defined, with deep-set eyes and a high-bridged nose. His voice was low and clear, his Adam's apple bobbing as he spoke. He just radiated this captivating aura. I cupped my chin in my hands, gazing at him dreamily. Mark suddenly turned his head. Our eyes met, and a smile spread across his lips. His dark eyes seemed to glitter with countless stars. On impulse, I leaned in and kissed him. Just as Mark was getting into it, I suddenly pushed him away. I pointed to the hat on my head and asked, You have a coworker who's a manager? Mark looked uncomfortable. He stammered for a while before saying, Yeah, he's my uncle. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was about to ask more when Mark said, You have to work this afternoon. I'll walk you back. Fair enough. As Mark and I were leaving, the group of workers who had been in the meeting all turned to stare at us. Being watched by so many people made me a little uncomfortable. I whispered to him, Your coworkers are so nice. They're all walking me out with you, like I'm some big shot. Mark was silent for a moment, then moved to block their line of sight. Yeah, everyone here really looks out for me. Everyone was so kind. Time flew, and Mark and I had been passionately in love for over half a year. During that time, I also successfully graduated. For the past few days, Mark had been acting secretive and avoiding my gaze. "What's wrong with you? Did you do something bad behind my back?" Pressed by my questioning, Mark finally explained, "I saw your ID once and know your birthday is coming up. I was planning a surprise for you." My heart practically bloomed when I heard that. I finally made it to my birthday. When I got home, Mark was standing at the door of my rental apartment with a bouquet of flowers. "Emily, happy birthday." Flowers may be cliché, but the damn gesture still moved me to tears. I was even happier when I saw he had prepared a candlelight dinner himself, just like in the movies. I wrapped my arms around his neck and planted a big kiss on his cheek. "Thank you, Mark." He smiled, his lips pressed together. "Don't be silly. I have a present for you, too. Open it up." Holding the beautifully wrapped gift box, my heart started pounding. I had received countless gifts in my life, but this was the first birthday present from a boyfriend. But the moment I opened it, I froze. Mark looked at me, a hint of hopeful anticipation in his eyes. "What's wrong? Is it ugly? You don't like it?" To be honest, it was beautiful, and I loved it. But a gift this valuable shouldn't have come from him. It was a jewelry set worth 6 figures. The smile faded from my face. I closed the box and looked into his dark eyes. "Mark, what made you decide to give me a jewelry set?" Mark glanced at me quickly, his words evasive. I didn't know what else to get. I just noticed your neck looked a little bare." I was scrolling on my phone and saw a live stream selling necklaces, so I picked out a set. A live stream? Selling necklaces? What major influencer sells $1 million jewelry on a live stream? Was he treating me like a 3-year-old? But looking at his incredibly sincere face, I started to doubt myself. "This emerald." Mark met my gaze, his eyes clear. "You can tell this emerald is fake, but the silver chain is real." I forgot to tell him my major was jewelry design. I'd seen the colorful gems in my mom's jewelry box before, and after starting my major, I'd handled hundreds, if not thousands, of gemstones. I could tell real from fake with a single glance. After my birthday celebration, Mark said something had come up at home and he had to go back for a bit. I asked casually, "Do you need me to go with you?" We had been dating for a while, and my parents knew about him. It seemed like the right time to meet his parents. But Mark's expression was strange, and he immediately found an excuse to turn me down. If this had been before, I wouldn't have cared. But now was different. He had just given me an expensive jewelry set. I couldn't help but be suspicious. After watching him get into a taxi, I immediately hailed one myself and followed him. Mark's taxi stopped after turning 2 corners. I watched as he got into a stretched Lincoln parked on the side of the road. A driver even got out to open the door for him. In that moment, my heart sank. Mark. I followed the car to a private club and glanced at the name. I remembered this place. It was not only members only but also invitation only. You had to be invited by a current member to get a VIP membership. Before I could process it, I saw a young, fashionable woman dressed in designer brand standing at the entrance, looking eagerly for someone. When she saw Mark get out of the car, her eyes lit up with affection as she rushed forward. She threw her arms around him, and Mark even patted her back a few times. Even from inside my taxi, I could clearly see the faint smile on Mark's face. The woman then leaned against him, linking her arm through his as they walked into the club together. I stared blankly at the empty entrance, feeling like a knife had been twisted in my heart. I never would have imagined that Mark was a boy toy kept by some rich woman. So what did that make me? The kept canary of a kept man? No wonder he'd given me a 6-figure jewelry set. He must have gotten it from that rich woman. The thought made my stomach turn. This was my first real relationship, and I had stumbled this badly. It was pathetic. When I got home, I had a few drinks out of anger and then called Mark to break up with him. Mark rushed back, made me some tea to help me sober up, and tried to hug me and massage my temples. I coldly pushed him away. "Mark, have you been doing shady things behind my back?" Mark looked at me quietly for a moment, then shook his head. No. Ha. I let out a soft laugh. Stubborn to the very end. Fine. If he wanted to keep lying, so be it. We're breaking up. Mark sighed softly. Emily, you're drunk. I might be drunk now, but I was perfectly clear-headed 2 hours ago. Seeing him on a date with his sugar mama and not calling him out on the spot was me doing him a favor. I just suddenly realized I don't like you anymore. That's not true. Mark suddenly rushed over and started kissing me. He was usually so gentle with me, but now he was like a furious beast, trying to crush me and melt me into his body. I couldn't break free, so I bit him, hard. Mark yelped in pain and let go, his gaze dark and intense. Emily, I'm not breaking up with you. With that, he bent down to kiss me again. I think I must have been crazy to kiss him back. Some things, once started, are hard to stop. By the time I was fully conscious again, it was the middle of the night. Mark was lying next to me, his breathing even and deep. I crept out of bed, got dressed, and looked at the sleeping Mark with a cold smile. After blocking him on everything, I took $200 from my purse and left it with a sticky note. I'm bored of you. This is for you to get yourself something nice. Goodbye. I returned home, defeated, and my parents immediately guessed I'd had my heart broken. They both tactfully avoided mentioning anything about inheriting the family business. But I didn't expect the breakup to hit me this hard. For some reason, my appetite disappeared. The sight of greasy food made me nauseous, and I was losing weight noticeably, which broke my mom's heart. She personally went and bought me a cake from La Royale Pâtisserie. Oh, right, they'd been bought out and changed their name. It was now called Emily's. Such a cheesy name. At least I could still stomach cake. My mom patted my head, comforting me softly. Out with the old, in with the new. That jerk didn't know how to appreciate you, but there are plenty of people who will. A lump formed in my throat, and tears welled up in my eyes. I fought them back, not wanting my mom to worry. I forced a smile. Mom, I'm fine. It's just a guy. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Your daughter is amazing. I'll have no trouble finding someone who truly cares about me. My mom nodded eagerly and seized the opportunity. That boy from the Miller family I mentioned before, the one who bought the bakery? I hear he's single now, so maybe you too. She was back on her matchmaking kick. Then she added, just do it as a favor for your dad and me. With my mom putting it like that, I could only nod. Okay, Mom, you can arrange it. My mom was overjoyed. Good, sweetheart. I'm so glad you've come around. That night, my stomach started to ache, probably from too much cake. I rubbed my abdomen for a while, then had a horrifying realization. I hadn't had my period in 2 months. A terrible premonition crept over me. Half an hour later, sitting on the toilet, I stared at the 2 lines on the test. I was numb. I didn't know whether to be happy or sad. I was so angry I wanted to find Mark right then and there, bite him a few times, and kick him for good measure. The sun came up, and I was still in a daze. My mom came into my room first thing in the morning, pulling me up to pick out dresses and do my makeup. I groggily remembered her telling me last night that I had a blind date today. I was pregnant. What was the point of a blind date? But then I looked up and saw the long-lost smile on my mom's face, and I couldn't bring myself to say no. Ever since I came home, she had been as sad as I was. Now that she was finally happy, why would I want to ruin it? So what if it was a blind date? I could just sabotage it. I patted my flat stomach and thought, little one, I'm counting on you today. We arrived at a lavishly decorated restaurant. Before we even entered the private room, I kept my head down, following my mom, determined to make a terrible impression on this Miller guy. For no other reason than that his last name was Miller, just like Mark's. No one named Miller was any good. Emily, come over here. This is Mark Miller. Mark Miller? I looked up reflexively. The man in front of me was none other than Mark. In that instant, my mind went blank, and my ears started ringing. He's Mark Miller? The real Mark Miller. So, the Miller who bought La Royale Pâtisserie was also him. I wasn't the only one who was stunned. He was, too. But Mark recovered faster than I did, his expression quickly returning to normal. Of course. Men are heartless. I sneered sarcastically. Well, shouldn't the great Mr. Miller be on a construction site somewhere? Mark looked at me calmly and retorted, and shouldn't Miss Young be waiting tables at a restaurant? My mom and his mom were both speechless. Mark glanced at the two matriarchs and then smiled. Just kidding. My mom finally caught on. Oh, so you two already know each other. I couldn't nod or shake my head. I felt like I'd swallowed a fly. Mrs. Miller then grabbed my mom, making an excuse to go shopping and leaving Mark to take good care of me. The room suddenly fell silent. Neither of us looked at the other. Why are you on a blind date? Wow, did he forget how to speak like a normal person after we broke up? I looked at him coldly. And you're not? That shut him up for a second. He explained, I didn't know it was a blind date when I came. I snorted. He could use that line on a 17-year-old, maybe. Just as I was about to retort, a wave of intense nausea hit me. I lunged for the trash can in the corner and started throwing up violently. Mark rushed to my side, rubbing my back and asking softly, "What's wrong? Have you not been eating properly? How many times have I told you to drink less iced stuff? Is your stomach upset? It's morning sickness, you idiot. Your kid is causing all this." I shoved him away. Save your crocodile tears, Mark. Don't think we can just wipe the slate clean. You lied to me first. I'm not getting back together with you, and I'm definitely not marrying you. Mark rubbed his nose. I haven't even said anything. Emily, even if you're sentencing someone to death, you have to give them a reason. I thought for a moment, then said with a deliberately cold face, you don't know the reason? You're not good enough. After spitting out the words, I fled. Once outside, I realized my face was burning hot. I shook my head, trying to banish Mark from my thoughts. I wandered around all day, waiting until I thought my parents were asleep before heading home. But they were both still sitting in the living room, looking like they were waiting for me. I gave them an awkward smile. My mom cut me off before I could finish. She had that "you don't have to explain, we get it" look on her face. See, sweetheart? I told you you'd like that Mark boy. I'm so relieved to see you two getting along so well. Did they think I was late because I was on a date with Mark? I took a deep breath. What did he say? My mom beamed. Mark said you two are in love and were just one step away from getting engaged. He was full of it. He really knew how to flatter himself. Who's in love with him? Mom, I'm not marrying him. My mom rolled her eyes at me. You're not still thinking about your ex-boyfriend, are you? He's poor and has no ambition. How is he supposed to give you a good life? I wondered if my mom's jaw would hit the floor if she knew Mark was the ex-boyfriend she was talking about. I explained helplessly, Mom, please don't mention him again. We're ancient history. Oh, my mom said, then smiled. I know, you're just being shy, right? It's okay, your dad and I aren't strangers. I was never going to get through to them. I was so tired from the day that I didn't even have the energy to argue. Seeing that I wouldn't be able to explain things anytime soon, I just waved my hand and went back to my bedroom. The next morning, I woke up to a lot of noise downstairs. Was my mom throwing a party at home? I rubbed my eyes and looked down. I couldn't believe what I saw. Mark and his parents were sitting comfortably on our sofa, chatting and laughing with my parents. This guy, Mark, was he ever going to give up? Furious, I yelled, Mark, get up here. The second the words were out, I regretted them. Seeing 4 surprised faces, I wanted to dive under the covers and suffocate myself. But Mark, on the other hand, was perfectly calm. He turned to the adults and said, "Emily is calling me upstairs." My parents quickly chimed in. "Go on, go on. Emily's room is the first one on the left on the second floor." Mark's parents were even more delighted. It was written all over their faces, "This marriage is a done deal." After pulling Mark into my room, I demanded, "What is the meaning of this?" He ignored me, instead looking around my room with great interest. "So this is what you like?" Mark scratched his head, embarrassed. "If I had known, I wouldn't have given you that family heirloom." So that was their family heirloom. Mark looked at me and smiled. It was my first time giving a gift to a girl. I had no experience, so I had to ask my sister for advice. "I didn't realize you wouldn't like it." Was that the point? I couldn't help but ask, "Your sister is?" Mark took out his phone and showed me a picture of his sister. "Hey, isn't that the woman who was so affectionate with him that day?" It was Mark's sister. "Your actual sister?" Mark looked at me and raised an eyebrow. "Same mother. Of course she's my actual sister." Awkward. Total screw up. If Mark found out I broke up with him because I was jealous of his own sister, he would probably laugh until his stomach hurt. Okay, I could forgive him for the jewelry. But he hid his identity from me. Though I didn't have much of a leg to stand on, since I'd hidden mine from him, too. Seeing me silent, Mark pinched my cheek and teased, "You're the most beautiful girl in the world to me." Huh? When I realized what he was implying, my face turned beet red. "What are you talking about?" "Mark, what are you smiling at? Get away from me. You can't touch me." As we were wrestling playfully, there was a knock on the door. It was my mom. "Emily, Mark, it's time to go." As we were leaving, Mark grabbed my hand, and I couldn't shake it off. When my parents saw Mark leading me downstairs by the hand, they gave me suggestive looks and kept winking. Mark's parents had booked a restaurant, saying the two families needed to have a formal get-together. I was still puzzled, but when I saw that the restaurant was the same hotel where I used to work, I didn't want to get out of the car. I snuck into the private room, trying to hide, terrified that my old colleagues would recognize me. Everyone sat down. Before we could even raise our glasses for a toast, that wave of nausea hit me again. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." I vaguely heard my mom mutter, "This kid has been throwing up like this for days. She's usually so healthy, what's with this sudden?" When I came back from being sick, I found the atmosphere at the table had grown tense. I glanced at Mark and saw that he was staring at me intently. What's wrong?" After I said that, I realized that my former coworker, Linda, was serving our private room. When Linda saw me, she was her usual friendly self. "Emily, what are you doing here? You're pregnant and still have to work?" "Well, not exactly. It was all my fault for being in a daze after finding out I was pregnant yesterday and instinctively complaining to Linda about it. I wanted to stop what happened next, but it was too late." She pointed at Mark, a look of sudden understanding on her face. "I get it. You're here for this boy toy, aren't you? Ugh, you. Cheating on our Emily is one thing, but now you're a father and you're not even contributing. You're just letting Emily be a single mom." The four parents looked at each other, none of them able to piece together the dramatic love story between me and Mark. Afraid my colleague would keep talking and make things worse, I covered her mouth and dragged her out. "Linda, I can handle this myself." "Thank you." Linda looked at me with great sympathy. "Emily, don't be afraid. Sooner or later, that jerk has to take responsibility." "Hey, why are you dragging me out here? I have to serve this table." No, it's fine, really." The atmosphere in the private room was incredibly tense. Mark's parents were staring at him with expressions that could rival a police interrogation. I wasn't faring much better. Under the stern gazes of our parents, we managed to cobble together a story about how we met and fell in love. "So, what about the baby?" 5 pairs of eyes stared at my stomach, and I couldn't help but shiver. Mark took my hand and dropped to one knee. Emily, I'm sorry. I was wrong to hide my identity from you. I will marry you and take care of you and our child for the rest of my life. Just as I was about to speak, the door was thrown open. Mom, Dad, what is this, the Dark Ages? Arranged marriage? Don't you know that my little brother is already in love with someone? For that girl, my brother worked on our family's construction site for over half a year. And that's not all. He took our family's heirloom emeralds and gave them away. He even bought a bankrupt bakery and renamed it Emily's. It's cheesy, I know, but it's because the girl's name is Emily. If that's not true love, what is? Anyway, I'm the first to object to this marriage. Mark's sister's dramatic entrance shocked the entire room once again. Sis, the person I'm in love with is Emily. Emily Young. I heard her whisper, you little brat, are you messing with me? Years after Mark and I got married, whenever I thought back to the chaos of that public reveal, it still felt like a whirlwind. In the end, Mark and I barely got a word in that day. Our parents quickly set a wedding date. Mark started visiting me every day, each time bringing a hideously ugly cake. Apparently, he had started taking lessons from the baker at Emily's. I looked at the misshapen monstrosity in front of me, and what little appetite I had left vanished. Maybe you should just quit. Aren't you just wasting good cake? But Mark had a the more you fail, the more you try attitude. No. I have to make the cake you love. Then, at our wedding, I'll feed it to you myself. I was silent for a moment. Do us both a favor and just leave the cake alone. Many years later, when my and Mark's son was 7 or 8. He had a crush on a little girl in his class and asked me excitedly, Mommy, I want to bake a cake for Tessa myself, just like how Daddy made cakes for you with all his heart. Of course you can. Come on, let's go find Daddy and have him teach you. At that moment, Mark was in the garden, pushing our daughter on the swing. When our little sweetheart saw me, she jumped off the swing happily. Mommy, I want cookies. I pretended to be troubled. Oh no, what should we do? Mommy doesn't know how to make them. Our little girl pointed at Mark. Daddy does. Mark and I looked at each other and smiled, our hands clasped tightly together.